It's preparing right now.
All right, it looks like it's working.
Okay. And then, so now it's live streaming. And so
Click on the record button at the bottom panel and click it to record on the iCloud.
where is that?
It says participants, share screen, raise hand, and then record.
Got it. And then record. Got it. Record on the cloud. Got it.
It says participants, share screen, raise hand.
And I am hearing a little bit of feedback. So somebody may have another thing playing that might need to be muted because there's a slight delay if somebody's got YouTube on or something. Looks like we're live.
All right, thank you. I hear a little feedback too, but maybe that's just the sound. Dina and Gina might be able to work on that. Anyway, welcome everyone to December's Affordable Housing Advisory Committee meeting. Councillor Campbell, so good to see you as always. Thank you for joining. We have Commissioner Tony DeBone with us today. I don't know how long he'll be with us during the meeting, but please stay as long as you can. Thank you very much. We have, see there, I still hear feedback, but I'll just keep going until someone gets that done. Roll call has been done. And now I want to open up to public comment. If there are any, I need to change my screen myself. Anyone here, now is time for public comment for attendees. If you would raise your hand, we will get you dialed in. I'll give a little bit of time to go there if we need. And if there's not any public comment, we'll go to the next agenda item. Okay, I see one hand raised and it's a phone call. If you can please connect and then state your first and last name, and then we'll have the floor for public comment. Thank you.
Hi, I go by my Hebrew name, Miriam Miller. Hello.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I called before the meeting started, and you're saying you wanted to go on the next agenda, and I was muted that whole time, and I don't know what the first agenda was.
The first agenda is public comment. So you have your hand raised, and so I called on you if you would like to provide public comment for the meeting today.
Well, I have a lot of things to say. What I could say publicly is very little. But I called last time for my first ever meeting, and I was writing myself some notes right before this, and I guess the best way to put it is the price of homes in Bend has gone up tremendously. I've watched this firsthand, having real estate and contractors and carpenters in my family, and if we can continue to make these kind of taxes off of that money, where is that money for people who service these people who can afford a medium home in Bend? I also would like to add, I have watched the deterioration of people in this town go from 1 to maybe 3 people a month needing some help because they were homeless. We all know what the homeless situation is now. And I realize you're here to talk to about affordable, but if the median people can't afford it, how can the people lower than them? And if we want people to pump our gas, clean our toilets, pack our groceries, we have to give them a place to sleep and a place to go to the bathroom in the morning and a place to cook their meals. That's my comment for now.
Thank you very much for calling in. And I remember you from the last meeting, you had shared that you had helped build some Habitat homes in the past. And that's just fabulous. So thank you for your work in the past. I appreciate it very much. I am looking for any other hands raised for public comment. All right. I am not seeing any more, so if I am overlooking anything, please say something, or that is our public comment. Committee members, Rachel sent the minutes out for us. Did everyone have a chance to review? And I'd like to have a motion put out to review and approve the minutes, if someone would so state.
I would move to approve the minutes. I beat Ian once again.
I'll second.
All right, so we have a motion to approve in a second. Is there any questions or clarifications on the minutes from last month?
I have a clarification on the minutes.
Yes, Heather.
It's stated, and of course I can't find it right now, that in terms of my service to the City of Bend's budget committee, that I recommended the city hire a planner, and the committee made that recommendation. So just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, thank you very much. We can correct that aspect of the minutes if so needed. Are there any other comments about the minutes? All right, so with that correction, I think it's okay if we went to a vote with that correction noted. All in favor of the minutes, if you would please raise your, I'll say real hand. I think everyone has their camera on, so all in favor of the minutes, I will read the names, and then they'll document that. So all in favor, please raise your hand. I see an I for Allison, I for Kathy Austin, an I, Ian Schmidt. Thank you, Matt Martino is an I. Mandy Dalrymple is an I. Joanna Gardner.
I'll abstain since I was not at the last meeting.
Thank you, thank you. An I for Cindy King, and Keith Wooden, did I catch you?
No, I same as Joanna. I need to abstain since I was not at the last meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Looks like Heather Simmons has her hand up as well.
Yes, Heather. Did I skip you? I'm sorry. It kind of skipped around my screen that time. I won't do that again.
Yes, that was my eye.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. All right. So next on the agenda, as you all know, are the proposals. Thank you everyone who spent the time to fill out the applications and submit them to the committee. We had a new program this year through Neighborly. I think it was a real time saver for staff to process all the applicants. So, and it was pretty easy to read. If somebody tells me there's a computer program that's easy, it already is jinxed for me, but it actually was pretty simple. So thank you for that being true, Rachel, and all your time and effort into that. A couple things about the presentations. I think everyone is aware the presentations are going to be timed for 5 minutes, and then there'll be 10 minutes for questions from the committee. And of course, I see Councillor Sheckelberg, thank you for joining. If there's any questions, we'll do that during that 10-minute time frame. And we really try to watch the time. So presenters, thank you for following up with your written applications. We'll try to stay real timely on that. Otherwise, we can be here for hours. I think Lynn's going to be our timer. What else am I missing? Oh, I know. I wanted to throw this out. We're not doing deliberations today. So we're just reviewing the presentations and then question and answers. Committee, we're not doing any deliberations or making any decisions for recommendations until January. But make some notes and that'll help you with scoring. If it starts to get into deliberations, I think Lynn or Rachel will probably cut that off. But where I was going with this is I don't believe there is a need for a conflict of interest, but I still want to put it out there. Just if there's anyone on the committee that wants to declare an actual conflict or perceived conflict of interest before we start the presentations, I'm going to open it up and raise your hand if you would like to state either way. I want to just be really upfront and open with the committee. So Keith, I see your hand raised. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Cindy. So I would like to declare a potential conflict of interest for the proposal related to Cleveland Commons. It's a Housing Works proposal through Housing Impact LLC, and I'm an employee at Housing Works. And then as well as the core community land trust proposals were kind of a part of the financing kind of guarantee package on that. So those two, I would like to declare those two projects. I can't remember anything else I need to say related to that.
I got you, Keith.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you,
I
Ed.
would imagine, but please let us know, is your employment in any way determined by your decision on these proposals?
It is not.
And is your
So,
salary or compensation in any way determined by this?
It is not.
Okay, so then I think with that, and Elizabeth, I expect you to jump in if I'm getting this wrong, but with that, then you have a potential conflict and are free to participate in discussion since you've declared you all are not the final decision makers, it's our council, and so you will only be recommending, eventually recommending to council to make the decision. So I think you're free to clear. I'm seeing Elizabeth nod, which is always a good sign. Thank you.
Yay. Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you, Keith. Okay, Allison, I see your hand, and then Heather will be after that, and then Matt. So Allison, go ahead.
Thank you, Cindy. I have a perceived conflict of interest because our firm does work for a core community land trust, but my employment is not conditioned on how I vote in this, and nor is my salary affected by it.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you, Chair. Just want to declare a potential conflict of interest as I do serve on Neighbor Impact's Board of Directors. And this pertains to the housing impact request. So I am a volunteer board member. I receive no compensation for my service, but just for transparency's sake.
Thank you, Heather. Matt Martino.
Matt's been having audio issues. So Juan, I think you're watching. I don't know if there's anything we can do on the fly and maybe come back to him. Or if you, yeah, I don't know what the best way is to solve this.
If you don't mind me jumping in, Lynn, and maybe Matt, I see that you've connected with your phone.
Yeah, he said he couldn't do it with the computer the first time. So he tried to call in with the phone.
Oh, did Matt go away? I wonder if he disconnected, or because I see that the phone is connected. So either you can do *6 on your phone to unmute yourself, or it might be that you can unmute directly from within the Zoom meeting.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay, that's strange. Yeah, for some reason I'm having all sorts of fun things with, I never have Zoom issues, but of course it's happening now. I have a potential conflict of interest as if any of the potential home buyers from CORE choose to use me for lending services, I would be involved, but my employment is not in any way impacted by that.
Okay, great. Thank you, Matt. Sorry you're having troubles. It seems to happen to one of us every
I don't know.
month. Yeah.
I know. I've never had issues, and I'm on Zoom like all day, so this is weird.
I'm gonna say, Cindy, this may mean that he's ready to chair a meeting someday.
I know. I just made a note of that. Kristen. Mandy, I see your hand raised.
I don't even know if this is or not, but I work for G5. It was one of the community support letters for the 27th and Ferguson. Does not impact my salary or my job in any way, but wanted to just declare it.
Thank you very much. I myself, I don't have any actual or perceived conflict of interest with the information and proposals that we're going to hear today. Terrific. Thank you for doing that. And Elizabeth, thank you as always for your input. It's always nice to have you here during the meetings. All right. I think we're doing great for time. The first presenter, there is a little bit of a delay between becoming a I think it's a panelist and a participant. So just bear with the delay. Oh, Kathy Austin, let me back up. Kathy, I see your hand raised.
Well, I had a question before we start hearing some of the proposals, and it's for Rachel or Lynn. I note that the total asks that we have from our participants today is $2,879,000. And I'm just wondering, do we have a sense of how many affordable housing funds or CDBG funds we're going to have available? So in my mind, I can kind of coordinate the two, the ask versus what we've got to work with.
Great question. So we don't have the final number yet. Receipts have been good. They've been a little delayed, I'd say, just with the implementation of CityView and the sort of craziness that was COVID and commercial development over the last year or so. But traditionally, we pull the exact number on January 2nd so that it captures the full calendar year of money. Let's estimate $1 million for affordable housing. And then Rachel, I don't know if you can give us the CDBG program amount right now or not. I'm so sorry, I don't have that right in front of me.
It's always an estimate based on the previous year's award, and it's about $375,000.
Thank you, Rachel. Does that help, Kathy?
Yes, it's always less than the ask, and I always like to know, okay, how much less? And I think it's also fair for people who are going to do their proposals to understand that if we had all the money in the world, it would be different. But there's always going to be a difficult discussion when we get there about how to spend what funds we have. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So our first presenter is Core Community Land Trust, the Poplar Street Pre-Development and Infrastructure. And is Amy Warren here?
It's not Amy Warren, it's Jackie Keogh, and she is in our attendees list. If she could be moved over, I will share my screen with her slideshow presentation. And just so Jackie is aware, I will be moving your slides along. So just give me the cue and I will go to the next slide.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Jackie.
Rachel, we're looking at your desktop, not at a presentation.
Oh, you don't want to see that. Let's try this again. How's that?
All right, well, thank you for taking the time. I'm Jackie Keogh. I'm the Executive Director of Core Community Land Trust. Next slide, please.
Oh, goodness. There we go.
So as many of you know, Core is one of the 4 affordable housing developers in the city. What makes us different is that we are the only permanently affordable homeownership developer, and we're the only one who additionally is building net zero communities. We are driven by our values equally of affordability, sustainability, and equitable access. And so all of our units become and stay community assets for City of Bend residents for generations to come. Next slide, please. So we are a community land trust. Community land trusts pop up all over the nation. It's a tool that a lot of cities use, especially in hot markets, to make sure that there will always be affordable housing available for its residents. In the community land trust model, our households own their own home outright. They leverage a traditional mortgage, while the land trust, as the nonprofit, owns the land underneath the home, and we lease it back to them through a 99-year renewable land lease. This is just a mechanism we use to allow, upon resale, if a homeowner chooses to sell, we ensure it goes to another low-income household at no additional cost of public or private money. The original homeowner receives a fair return on their initial investment, while also helping generations of other homeowners have access to affordable homes like they did. Next slide, please. So when we get into dollars for doors, this is where permanently affordable homeownership is really impactful. So, a proposal now that would serve 4 lower income households upon resale and the life cycle of the home would eventually serve 33 households. And that's where we're looking to create long-term community assets for the city of Bend. Next slide, please. In terms of community needs, I don't need to go into this. We all know that affordable housing is such a need in our community, not just now, but for generations, it will continue to be a crisis. So CORE has always been committed to workforce, serving our workforce. We serve households who are earning between 40% of area median income all the way up to 120%, with the majority of our units focused at under 80. But CORE will also be pushing out family size commitment for units, recognizing that that is where the greatest need is. And so you'll see our future units, including Poplar, B2 and 3 bedrooms. Next slide, please. So our request, the city has already funded our land acquisition through CDBG. We are coming back for requests for the pre-development site improvement in infrastructure. So what you guys would see is the construction package for $275,000. This site is about a half acre located in Southwest Bend off of Poplar. We are, as CORE is always, creative in our affordable housing strategies to bring units to the city. We will be using House Bill 2001 and SB 458 to divide the parcel, the half acre, into 2 quarter acres, and then put 3 to 4 units on each parcel, resulting in 6 to 8 units. So our goal is to sell the majority of these at below 80%, and we address the city's goal number 3. Next slide, please. This is our timeline. So we plan to acquire this property from Avion Water Company in February of next year. Then the following year will just be full pre-development, assembling our team. And then we will be moving on to infrastructure and building of the homes 2023. And the city of Bend would realize these community assets in 2024 when we sold them to local residents. We're requesting the standard land trust acquisition terms for this development, which is 40 years at 0% interest with terms revised at year 20. Like it was mentioned before, Housing Works acts as CORE's guarantor on these projects, and that's something we're in discussion with them for this as well. Next slide.
The time, if you happen to be close to your end of your presentation.
Yes, last slide. So this is our project budget. So this is really for you all to be able to reflect back on with your questions. It looks a little funky, I think, on this slide, but that's it. So we can move to the last slide, which is the same as the first.
Thank you, Jackie. I hit the wrong button on my screen, so I made everyone disappear. So thank you for the presentation. It's nice to meet you. I'm so used to seeing Amy Warren, and she's just done a great job, and I'm sure you're going to do just as well. So welcome aboard. I'm going to open it up for questions from the committee, and we've got 10 minutes for questions, and just a quick little time saver. If you find yourself saying, well, I agree with what somebody and so said, and you say the same thing, you don't have to, try to keep it brief, but because I want to get to all the questions that we can. So Kathy, I see your hand raised first.
And I'll talk really fast for you. So Jackie, you might know I'm an architect and I worked on the HB 2001 code changes. And so I'm very interested to see how you're going to implement this. And I guess I was wondering, it would be great if you could do 4 units on each lot. And I was wondering what your thoughts were as to why you might do 3 instead of 4, if you're at the point where you can speak to that, because of course we'd like to see you get as many units as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have been working with Blackmore Planning Services to develop feasibility. And so we are not fully there yet. However, we plan to be in early 2022. I would say really there's two conflicting goals here. So we want as many units as possible, and I agree with you on that. However, at the same time, we know that family-sized affordable housing units are so rare, and especially recognizing that family-sized units help generational living, and multi-generational living is more likely going to be sought by people of color who are at a higher need of affordable home ownership opportunities. You know, CORE goes back and forth in terms of number of units or who in terms are we serving who need those family-sized units. Family-sized units tend to be a little larger, which would potentially be closer to the 6-unit count. And so those are two conflicting values that we're working through.
No, I appreciate that. That's a great answer. Thank you. I understand what you're saying, and hopefully can accomplish both at a higher number, but we'll see. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm looking for any other hands raised. Any other questions from the committee? At this point, it's easier for me to see your virtual hand. Well, I have a question. I'll just chip in here. Have you asked, or any of these costs associated with this, are there any other resources such as the ARPA plan, American Rescue Plan resources? And if we can't give your full ask or full fund, how will that affect your application if with the county with funds that direction, if that is also the case?
Yeah, so CORE's goal really is to scale so that we can give the city of Bend and Deschutes County more units than what we're currently giving in terms of our rate of production. So that being said, CORE is actually asking separately for the ARPA funds for Deschutes County to build outside of the city of Bend. This would be probably the only opportunity that CORE has to use ARPA funds to build outside the city of Bend, given other cities' limited resources compared to the city of Bend. And so while our ARPA proposal states that if we did use our ARPA money for units in the city of Bend, we double the number of units proposed, that ideally we do not have the ARPA funds used on the Poplar project. We really want to spread resources so that we can develop more units here. We are leveraging $175,000 in private funds, as well as $500,000 in proposed lift funds from the state. And so, yeah, the short answer is no, the ARPA funds are not linked to this proposal.
Great.
If we were unable to get City of Bend funding, it would significantly delay the project, and we would have to go back to the drawing board in terms of what subsidy we would need to acquire. So it would delay our ability to produce units for the city.
Great, thank you. I think that was another question, and you just answered that. Kathy, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, I was curious, Jackie, if you have a number, a ballpark number about how much subsidy you need per unit. I've heard a rather large range, and I'm curious for you, your organization specifically.
That's a great question. So subsidy in terms of the gap, right?
Yes,
is really what you're looking
the gap.
for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I can pull that up for you real quick.
I mean, I think it's a number that it's important for people to understand that a builder can't just go out and build affordable housing, that there's a lot of subsidy needed.
I was looking at historical numbers that the city of Bend have, contributed to our projects. In the average city of Bend funding for a project is $750,000. And so that's significant. But in terms of how much subsidy, let me just pull that up for you all.
If you don't have it quickly, that's okay. I was just wondering, I've heard so much as like $200,000
Yeah, no, I
per
have the
unit.
number. I'm an exact
Okay.
person, so I want to get you the exact number.
Okay.
So our permanent subsidy is on our 8th Street project. So I'm just comparing that because Poplar's not there yet. Between the permanent subsidy and the down payment assistance, you're looking at $600,000. So my average for the city of Bend is pretty correct. And that's for 5 units. So if you divide that, you're looking at over $100,000 per unit. This cost is, I've been in affordable housing for over a decade. This cost is $100,000 is very comparative to other affordable housing developers' gaps. And that's really because CORE is trying to serve households at very low incomes, right? So when we're serving households who are at 40% area median income, we need more money because they can leverage a less of a traditional mortgage. And so what we don't want to do is create all these affordable housing developers who can only kind of cream and serve higher income households. We want to have access, equitable access for all of our residents, like the woman on the phone was saying, people who are janitorial services and are lower paid jobs. And so that gap is spread out among different area median incomes, but it allows us to reach extremely low income households. And we're one of the few developers in the city who's doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Well, with that, I think you are the next presenter with the next agenda item. So if Rachel, you want to get that ready to go, and we can go through the down payment assistance for Cressida.
So I'm going to ask, me and Rachel talked about this, although we've submitted 2 full proposals for presentations, we're going to flip through the slides to get to slide 6 about this request, because you already heard this. Okay, so Cressida is on 8th Street. It's broken ground and it's going to start construction in Q1 of 2022. So this project has full support from the city of Bend in terms of land acquisition and construction costs. This is the final gap for the project. As I was mentioning, CORE serves extremely low income households, and those households need additional down payment assistance. So we're requesting $75,000 for our Cressida homeowners. And, this question probably come up, so I'll just answer it. If we are not able to get this funding, it would cause extreme hardship for our extremely low income households. We've actually already selected our households. And so we would hate to have to turn folks down or to say, you need to go out and find just more down payment assistance money through another source if we are unable to receive this. We also, the way City of Bend structures its CPA is quite unique for CDBG. We use this as part of the purchase revenue that we use to pay off our loans. And so without this, we would unfortunately have to defer the payoff of the Affordable Housing Fee Fund loans, which are currently will be satisfied after the purchase of all the homes. Next slide, please. So this is the timeline of what we need to achieve. As I said, we've selected our homeowners. We're actually very excited to see an increase of people of color for this round. And we'll start building and we'll finish building in 2022. So the sale of homes will happen right towards the end of the year or in January 2023. You see the mortgages in terms of the leverage that it's really important to me, having worked for a city, it's important to show that leverage. And so, the $75,000 is leveraging close to $1 million of mortgages. And that's next slide, or last slide. So now we can just jump into questions.
Well, I see you've learned from Amy that your presentation is very succinct and efficient. So thank you very much.
And I'm happy to address that. So Amy Warren has been a visionary as one of our co-founders. She's been on staff with us for 7 years. And we're so appreciative of her time. But as many of you know, she recently stepped away from her role on staff with us to pursue her own general contracting work. And at the same time, CORE made the strategic decision that we need to have external general contractors so that we can have multiple projects going at once, so that we can bring the City of Bend more than 5 units a year. And so we're currently bidding out that general contractor role. And so you'll see staff you've seen a staff transition, but it's only so that we can scale, so that we can better meet the need of the community.
Thank you, Jackie. Okay, opening up for questions. Heather, I see your hand first, and then Allison, you'll be after Heather. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you just confirm what the length of the payback period is for these dollars?
The payback period that the city of Bend requires. Yeah, that's not a question I am certain of, and I would have to connect with Rachel to confirm that payback period. But we can follow up and get that to you.
Did you have another question, Heather?
No.
Oh,
thank you.
Right. Thank you. Allison, you are next.
Thank you. I've not seen it right this second, but the budget indicated personnel expenses of at least $25,000 per home. Is that, can you speak to that a little bit? Is it typical?
Yeah. So CORE is required by the state to only pull 7% of a developer fee, which is something that is what we take as the portion for doing the work of the development. That is average or low, I would say, nationally. And so CORE will be taking a $65,000 developer fee for the Cressida project. We are there, our previous budget that you guys have seen also included a project management fee because we were the general contractor. We will be paying that outwards now, and CORE will be supplementing that to be more competitive externally in the industry. And so long story short, the small fee that CORE is taking is below national standards and in line with state standards.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. I see your hand raised. You are next. Is everything okay with Matt?
I'm not hearing him. Am I the only one that's not hearing him?
I heard one. I know. I heard one tiny sound and then it went away.
And maybe if it's okay, Chair, while we're
can you hear me
waiting
now?
from.
Yes.
Yeah, there he is.
Oh, yeah. All right. So yeah,
Okay.
it's across the board here. I believe the repayment terms on the down payment assistance start in year 31 or on a 20-year amortization. So the repayment doesn't actually happen until after the permanent 30-year fixed rate mortgage is paid to keep the affordability, if that answers the question.
Okay. Is that in the proposal anywhere that I missed?
Yeah. So
those are actually the kind of standard terms that the city has proposed for these types of funds.
Okay.
Yeah. This, I think in the RFP itself that the developers respond to, we have listed, I think, 4 different loan products. Down payment does go year 31 through 40 for affordability purposes, because that's sort of how it has been working for a long time and seems to work the best for the home buyers. But we can send that out, each of those loan products after this meeting, if that would be helpful for the committee.
Yeah, no, it's embedded well in here, but it's not clear whether that the proposals are intending for that to be what they follow. So thank you.
And I think how
from a buyer's standpoint, it helps, and it doesn't impact their debt to income ratios since the repayment doesn't take place until after the permanent mortgage is done.
And the proposals in Neighborly say these are the terms you're accepting. If anything's different, enter it in the proposal. And so if they don't enter anything differently, it defaults to those city terms.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying. I don't see any other committee questions. Appreciate it, Jackie, so much. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you all.
All right, next on the presentation list is the 620 Florida Avenue project. Justin Orton, when you're ready, Rachel will have everything ready for you and you can start.
So Justin has emailed that he cannot connect to the meeting. I've tried to connect him to our IT staff to help with that. We may need to move to the next proposal to see if Justin can join us later.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to make a note to remind myself to do that. If I forget anyone, please say, hey, remember Justin. All right, well, next we will go to Habitat for Humanity, the Watercress Townhomes Down Payment Assistance.
I can't remember who's moving people over. It looks like Melissa is waiting to be moved. Did we establish who was doing that? I'll move her over for now, but I thought there was a staff person doing that. Sorry. Quick note for folks, you will get, when we move you over to panelists, you'll get a pop-up that says, do you want to be a panelist? So just keep an eye out for that. Good job, Melissa. You followed the instructions. Sorry about the delay.
Thank you. I'd like to request that Julene Bodner be also moved over. She's also watching. Okay. Well, thank you so much for having us here today. I'm really excited to share some information about our Watercress project. And I want to give Jackie some kudos. She did a lot of really great preemptive explaining about permanent affordability. We also have a land lease model, and we have 39 homes being developed that will be permanently affordable in Bend. And she described that model with panache. So I won't spend a lot of time talking about that in particular, but I will just get started on our presentation. So we are requesting $200,000 in down payment assistance for 8 families at our Watercress site. Next slide, please. So our Watercress property is located just near Pine Nursery Park off of 18th Street and Watercress Way. It is a site where we are building 8 townhomes, or 4 units that each have 2 townhomes. Next slide, please. This is just a little visual of what they will look like. So far, this is the rendering that we have. They will be for families that are 40 to 80% AMI, of course. And next slide, we'll talk a little bit about some things we really want you to know about the project. So one of the things I know that's important to you, and it's also important to us, is that we want you to know that we're shovel ready. Go ahead, Rachel, with the little blue. There you go. We're more than shovel ready. This photo was taken the end of November. Go ahead, Rachel, you can advance me a little bit. November 23rd. Yep, perfect. You can see we have the foundations and the stem walls being constructed, and the estimated completion date is fall of 2022. So we're already in the trenches and making things happen there. Go ahead, Rachel. As I mentioned, there are 8 townhome units located near Pine Nursery Park. Each townhome will be just under 1,000 square feet. And we are using a land lease for perpetuity. That's a hard word for me to say, perpetuity, but that's affordability and perpetuity. And we are so honored to be able to build our portfolio in that way. We just completed 11 townhomes on the northwest side of Bend, 9 of which are on a land lease. So we are on our way, and we're really grateful for this opportunity to partner to continue that. Next slide, please. And you can advance all these for me, Rachel, go ahead. So we also want you to know that we've selected our families. One of the things that's really interesting about Habitat is 75% of our families tend to be single moms with kids. That happens to be the same breakdown for this project too. 6 of the 8 families are single moms with kiddos. This project also is more racially diverse than our historical projects, and we're really excited about that too. Habitat has undergone a real deep dive internally with policy review under a DEI lens, and we are starting to see some fruits from that with more racially diverse staff and now more racially diverse families for this project. The families that we've selected, they represent caregivers, retail workers, nonprofit employees, service industry, and retirees. And they are already undergoing their training with sweat equity, working on lots of different things in their financial coaching and homeownership education. Next slide. So I tried to keep this really brief. 3 minutes can feel like an hour sometimes or a second. So I kept my presentation really short because I know that you'll have some questions, and I have Julene with me, our CFO, to answer some of the financial questions as well. So we're ready for some questions.
Thank you very much. I have some questions, but I'm going to have the committee start. So Keith, I see your hand raised first, and then Kathy, you'll be next.
Thank you, Cindy. So first off, I want to commend you for getting projects moving. It's not easy these days to actually break ground and get stuff done. So very, very nice job there. The question I had really was, we're gonna be faced with a decision where we, potentially have not enough funds to cover all asks. And when I look at your financial model for this and your estimation of what kind of the loans will be to be able to cover some of the costs, is that how much of that is known, I guess? For example, and when I look at the sources for how you're going to cover kind of all the costs related to the deal, if the CDBG money was slightly less than 200,000, is there a potential chance that the mortgages might be able to account for that gap based off the homeowners that you've potentially selected? I mean, is that is that clear? I mean, do you understand that part? I'm just, if there was less money to hand out, could you make it work kind of the same way with mortgages that you think might happen, and that number might go up, I guess is my question.
So I'll answer just a little bloop and then I'll pass it to Julene. But the short answer is, without this funding, we have to fundraise more, and then our subsidy just increases. But Julene, please go ahead.
Yes, I was going to say, because we've already selected these families, we have estimated what their loan takeout will be based on the affordability policies that we have. And so that is what we're anticipating will come out of mortgage loans at the time of closing. The one thing that might impact that is actually if interest rates go up, their loans will actually be smaller. So that's what we're hoping at this point, is that the loans will stay stable for interest rate.
Okay, no, thank you for that. And I guess, just looking at it, would you defer some of the overhead fees attached to the deal to make up for that? Is that, if it's not in the loans on the sources side, is that probably what you guys would do to cover if we can't give you the full ask?
Like Melissa mentioned, we would just be needing to do additional fundraising with either businesses or individuals in the area. A lot of what we've been doing lately is because we've been trying to increase the number of homes we've built in any given year. We're working with a lot of subcontractors in the area. And so the overhead portion is actually construction labor. And so really those are already set by the contractors for this particular build.
Oh, so that's not direct to Habitat. That's more related to subcontractors you hire to actually complete the build and all that kind of stuff. Okay.
We're still doing a fair amount of our own building, but our volunteers base has been cut way back because of COVID. And so in order to keep building, that's why we've had to look outside.
Gotcha. No, that makes a lot of sense. It's not easy to build these days. I completely understand. Thank you.
And I just want to add to what Julene had mentioned, because our townhomes are 2-story. We appreciate the help of subcontractors because of safety concerns for volunteers doing 2-story units.
Thank you, Keith. Kathy, I see your hand raised. You have the floor.
Thank you. I'm going to ask the same question I did of CORE, because I think it's important to kind of look at apples to apples, and you two are the ones doing the land trusts with ownership. And I would say, because you're maintaining ownership of the land, and I didn't really say this with CORE, I mean, part of the subsidy is the plot of land that the house is sitting on and whatever the cost was for that. But what would you say on average is the kind of subsidy needed to deliver one of your homes?
Yeah, that's a good question, Kathy. The most recent numbers that we have run per home, we average between 100 and 125,000 in subsidy. It's pretty close to what CORE reported.
Right. And then on top of that would be what the lot would sell for if it was on the market, right? So, I mean, what you're talking about doesn't include the cost of the land necessarily, or does it? It does. Julene, you're saying it doesn't. Okay. Interesting. So have you found that you're able to do more now that you've moved to a land trust model?
Absolutely. We averaged, before we brought in a land trust model, 5 to 6 homes a year. And we are creeping close to 20 homes per year. And our model will be to incrementally move into that capacity over the next 5 years.
Well, this is really exciting, because I was very familiar with land trust model before I came to Central Oregon, and I was encouraging CORE, and now I'm glad to see you doing that. I think it's an excellent way to preserve affordability long-term, but also to leverage what fundraising that you do to get as many units as possible. So congratulations on that. That's it for me. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Kathy. It's for sure, it's a game changer for us.
Thank you, Kathy. Keith, your hand is still raised. Did you have another question that I overlooked?
Sorry, I'm very poor at, there we go.
It's all good. It's all good. I have 2 questions. And I don't know, Rachel, can you pull up the presentation? And I think it's slide page 2, and it's like the copy of the plat. My one question is, in your proposal, you've got 368,000 in program overhead. Can either one of you describe what that is for? And then on the page 2, I just wanted to make note of this with the committee. So currently, city requirements the frontage for homes to front the street. And if you look at this map, the front doors front 18th Street. And currently there's not a sidewalk there. And there is a bike lane, but there's no parking on 18th. Do you guys have to put a sidewalk and connect the neighborhood there? Tarango Glen, is Habitat needing to put a sidewalk to connect to Yeoman when that circle is put in? I just want to do food for thought. Having the front doors front 18th Street, drivers there are going about 40 miles an hour. So just food for thought when Planning Commission asks us for input on design. This is a result of that, and maybe that's the best way you guys could put the townhomes on that property. But I just wanted to speak to that as well, just a heads up for the committee.
So regarding the sidewalk, Julene, do you happen to know if we have to do that sidewalk connector?
I know there's been discussions about it because the previous owner had paid the city for the sidewalk to be put in. And then when we purchased the property, there was a question as to whether the credit for that payment would go to us as the builder. And I'm not certain if they've what the discussion around that has been. I'm just looking to see if there was any additional things in the file, and I'm not seeing that at the moment. But I know it was part of the planning discussion. So to answer your other question about the program overhead, and I apologize, that is obviously causing some confusion. That was something that we term it internally. It's really construction labor. So it's how we were defining costs that weren't directly attributable to that a particular house, but to the overall project. So that goes back to my answer to Keith about the construction subcontracting that we've been doing for the 2-story builds in that part.
Okay, great, thank you. Sorry if I repeated the question, because I just the meeting said, please don't do that, and then I did it, I think. And then just to clarify, there's only 4 buildings. There are not 5 units. There's just 4 foundations at the project.
That is correct. For a total of 8 townhome units.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you so much. I don't see any other hands raised from the committee. Thank you for your time and your presentation. Rachel, have we made contact with Justin Orton yet?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Okay, well, let's just go to the next presenter, Housing Impact, Cleveland Commons.
While we're rating Cindy, I just want to agree with you on the stupidity of facing 18th Street and how frustrating that can be. Then there's no private yards for these kids. It's just, I don't know. There needs to be flexibility on that.
It looks like we've brought over David Brandt. Can we also bring over Colleen Thomas?
I've already requested it.
Hello, thank you for hearing us. This is our cover screen, so you want to go to the next slide. So Cleveland Commons is a permanent supporting housing development. It'll currently planned for between 31 and 34 units, depending on how much service space we end up finally agreeing to design into the building. It's located between Cleveland Avenue, 4th, 5th, and Reed Market on the little diagram. The site's currently owned by Neighbor Impact, and it's operated as 5 transitional housing units. Next slide. The next 3 slides are the preliminary design. Actually, this is a little bit of an earlier design. We've had a couple of changes, but and it'll probably change even further in terms of how we lay out the service space. But this is the site. This is the site plan. So as you'll notice, it's just south of the substation. And then we have a neighbor to the south of us who actually we've dealt with before, it's actually a very good neighbor, and we're going to be working with him to make sure that neighborhood concerns are addressed. Next one. This is the ground floor. So the service areas are in the brown and the white in some community space. And then we have singles and 1 bedrooms are the blue units. Next one. And then it's 3 stories. So like I say, the ground floor has the most amount of service space, and there's a little service space on the 2nd and 3rd floors. Next slide. So this is a pretty well supported project, at least we think so. The county has already pledged $2 million in ARPA funds to support this project. OSH has a dedicated PSH funding source. It's about $25,000 this year. And we will be applying for about 4.6 million of that funds. It does have conventional mortgage debt, about 1.125 million. And we are asking for $700,000 from the city of Bend for a total capital cost of $8.5 million. And then we'll also be requesting up to $10,000 per unit per year in subsidies from OHA PSS, PSH, as well as we're hoping that the state of Oregon passes this Medicaid waiver and we will be able to access funding from that source as well. Next slide. Our proposed schedule will apply for competitive OHA funding in March. Hope to close financing and begin construction by the end of beginning of 2023, and we will be opened in around the middle of 2024. And so this project is, just so folks who don't understand what PSH is, it's for chronically homeless, and this will be individuals and couples. We're not anticipating any kids in this development. And it's for the folks that you see out on the street. We will select the tenants through the coordinated entry system. And I'll defer to Colleen a little bit more. She's much more of an expert on homeless services than I am. She can describe a little bit about what we're anticipating going on in the project.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Colleen Thomas. I'm the Homeless Services Coordinator for Deschutes County Health Services, and we're really excited about the potential of this project with Cleveland Commons. As David mentioned, individuals would be selected for this program or this project through the coordinated entry system, which is managed by the Homeless Leadership Coalition for those individuals that are chronically homeless that have high vulnerability. And so there are still discussions happening in regards to the project implementation on who the service provider would be, an operator. But there's a lot of support and collaboration going into this, as we know that permanent supportive housing is a huge gap in our system of our continuum of services. And so happy to answer any more in-depth conversation or questions that you might have about that. But that's kind of the preliminary for program development and selection of participants.
Thank you so much. I'm going to open it up for committee questions. Kathy, I see your hand raised. You have the floor.
I always have my hand raised. Sorry about that.
It's all good.
Colleen, this is a question for you. The kind of housing that this is going to provide, the supportive housing, is, I think, the biggest lack that we have in Central Oregon and in the United States, actually. So I was wondering, could you give me an estimate of like kind of what the ballpark need is versus how much this is going to provide?
Yeah, of course. Great question, Kathleen. And I couldn't agree more that, this is definitely an area of need in our community, and I think is where a lot of investment should go to. I think that currently in our coordinated entry system, we have, I believe the last I checked, just for this year, we have over 100 individuals that would meet this permanent supportive housing level of need. And the project is, I believe, David, it's at 36 units currently. Again, this isn't, limited duration for permanent supportive housing. It's really a need for those that need it for as long as they have that need. So of course it's, this is going to make an impact because we don't have this type of service in Central Oregon, but the need is always going to be much greater than what our current capacity is.
And, we often hear in our community, there's this belief that if we're helping the houseless, that they'll just keep flooding into Central Oregon. And yet in our point in time count, we found about 80% of people were from Central Oregon. And I was wondering if you could address how you're going to choose who gets to move into this housing, and if there's a component of whether they have connections here in Central Oregon.
Yeah, so again, this would all depend on who the selected service provider and operator of the facility would make those determinations on who they would like to be selected for the project. But currently in our coordinated entry system, we do ask questions for how long individuals have resided in Central Oregon, and that definitely could be a level or component of selection. It's based on really what the operator, how they will define that. And I think it's definitely something that we would take into consideration as when we do the coordinated entry system assessment. We are ensuring that we want to make sure that people are staying in the community in which they are living and residing and have supportive services connected to them. So we wouldn't necessarily be taking somebody that didn't have connections here in Central Oregon.
Yeah, I think that's going to be important to communicate as you move forward for acceptance in the community. Not that that wouldn't deter you, but I just think it's important for people to kind of understand how that works. And I have a quick question for David. I've been asking for the land trust people that are homeownership people what kind of subsidy per unit they have, but yours is in a completely different ballpark. And I was just wondering, do you have any idea on average what kind of subsidy is necessary on a per unit basis for your organization?
Well, for this project, the subsidy is probably close to 75% of the total cost.
Wow. Okay, thank you. And people wonder why we don't have more affordable housing. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Kathy. Heather, I see your hand raised.
Thank you. So I understand that there's a shelter currently operating on that property. What will become of current residents during this process?
I believe that Neighbor Impact is actually transitioning folks out of that facility if they haven't already. So, and I think that they obviously have their plans for relocating anybody who's there, but it's transitional. So they're on 2-year leases, and they have to move on after that 2-year period. So Neighbor Impact has kind of been planning for this transition.
Okay, thank you.
I don't see any other hands raised. David, could you clarify for me that the $10,000 per unit in service subsidies? I think I know the answer to this, but that's separate from the, there's another fee of a developer fee of $10,000 per apartment. Is that typical in your projects? I wish I could remember stuff like that, but
Yeah, it's actually it's less than half of what we typically get in developer fee.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, without any additional questions from the committee, appreciate your time and your input. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
So let's go ahead to Related Northwest, the 27th and Ferguson proposal. Rachel will do her thing and they'll be moved over. And then once you start, you'll have the floor. Thank you.
Start video. Hello, hi, I'm Steph Condor. How are you all? Sorry, my camera's weird, so I look like I don't know, this is my avatar, we'll say. Hi, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Steph Condor with Related Northwest. Next slide, please. Today, I'm going to be talking about a project that we have in concept that's 27th and Ferguson. We're really excited about it. We've been sniffing around the city of Bend for a while. You may have remembered me from last year with the 27th and Mary Rose. So we stayed on the same street. We just moved a little further down the road and got a bigger site. So that's really exciting for us. For those of you that weren't on this call last year, so Related is a national developer. They started over 40 years as affordable housing developer. They've evolved into doing all kinds of amazing things across the country, big catalytic public-private partnerships, high-end luxury housing, office, retail, multifamily, but at the heart of what they still continue to do is affordable housing. So I got the opportunity to open an office for them in Portland about now 3.5 years ago. Presently, Related Northwest has about 700 units of affordable housing in development or completed in the Portland metro area. We're really interested in expanding our footprint throughout Oregon, because that was, really my goal of working with Related, is to help scale affordable housing throughout the state. We have a huge housing crisis, and Bend is one of the most significantly impacted that we think that we can add real value to in the community. Next slide. So here are some of our current projects. We just were recently awarded a couple of other projects since we last spoke. Bottling Blocks, which is a catalytic project partnership with Trammell Crow. We're going to be fulfilling their inclusionary housing requirements. So they're going to be doing about 600 units of housing, and we're going to be fulfilling about 50 of units of affordable housing on their behalf, and actually leveraged more money with the state and are delivering 110 units of affordable housing. Another one we're doing is 74th and Gleason we just got, which will be 41 units of permanent supportive housing and 96 family units serving, immigrant, refugee, communities of color, domestic violence survivors. And it's going to have a lot of programmatic things. And at some point, if anybody's interested in hearing more about it, I'd love to share with you because it's pretty cool. But next slide. We're going to focus on Ben today. These are a few of the projects, what they look like that we're working on. Next slide. So the project description, the site itself that we have an LOI on is pretty unique opportunity in the Southeast Elbow area. This particular site is 9 acres. It is in an RM zoned site. It is in the urban growth boundary. It's actually, I think, within the next 2 weeks going in for annexation. The sellers agreed to annex it on our behalf. So we are actually in conversations. We're just south of a North Peak development that is further along, and we'll be tying into their utilities, and they've been negotiating with the city. So we've been having conversations with them, and it's just west of a Hayden Homes project. So, the Elbow, was part of this urban growth boundary expansion. And what we're trying to do is to make sure that we get affordable housing out in this community. There's some great schools out there that families could really benefit from. And this is the time and the opportunity. We know that there's a good amount of coordination, but I feel like the seller is patient, sees the vision. The broker is actually part of the owner entity. And so we've had great transparent conversations about timeline and understanding how affordable housing works and the funding and things of that nature. So we feel pretty good. We're early on in concept. We've had kind of initial meetings with civil and long range planning about this project. We know we have more to do. But we think that we will be able to submit this for this next funding round with the state. What I envision is this could be a phased project at 9 acres. We think that we could do about 200 units of family housing, and then perhaps do a senior housing community as well to have kind of a co-generational model, which is very much like the model we had planned on doing on the Mary Rose site last year. Next slide.
Jeff, you're close to out of time. So if you don't mind just wrapping when you can.
Yeah, so, next slide, not necessary. We think that there's some great amenities that are going to be coming in here. There's a lot of mixed use that will be coming in. The proximity to schools we think is highly desirable, and just making sure that, a range of families are served. Next slide. And, in general, we believe that we'll be serving 60% AMI on the family. The affordability can deepen as we are able to bring in additional funding. And on the senior building, we'll have a greater span of affordability. It's really a function of getting the funding in there. Next slide. And so, the concept is much like what we proposed last year with a workforce housing component and a senior component. And we always bring in lots of great services. We plan things like STEM rooms, computer labs, and really try to make it a service and amenity rich community that really can benefit from being in a location that's highly desirable, but supporting what families and workforce housing folks need. Next slide. So submitting in March of next year, state award will come in July. We think that we can close August to September of the next year. We will be working while it is in application mode to be kind of like getting ready for it. you know, and there is some things with infrastructure and entitlement with sewer, you guys, I'm sure are going to ask, and I can answer that. But once we get into the Q&A and talk about all of that. Next slide. And these are some of the folks that we've been connecting with and speaking with that, you know, support this project. And we do a lot around community engagement. I feel like I've gotten the opportunity to meet a lot of residents around Bend and community members and just different stakeholders, and we will continue to do that. We found it to be a really inviting community that feel really positive that this isn't a one-off. I'm having multiple, as Lynn can attest, multiple conversations with all different types of landowners and developers. And so we're just trying to build our pipeline here. We want to be in Bend as a long-term owner and operator of multiple affordable housing communities in the city of Bend and Greater Deschutes County.
Thank you, Steph. I'm gonna thank you for your presentation and your information. I'm going to open up to questions. I have a question. Do you have your PSA signed and in place? I know in your application you were hoping to have that agreed to earlier in November. Do you have the property secured, and what does that look like?
Yeah, so we do have an executed LOI. We should have the PSA probably by the end of this month. We're kind of, what I'm actually doing is I'm working with Hayden Homes as well as North Peak, because I want to tie my PSA to basically the pump station. So along Ferguson, the city has planned in putting in a sewer line.
Correct.
And there is some negotiation right now going to a greater depth to do more capacity, but evidently if they can't get that and get the funding for it, because they do have a shortfall, supposedly they're going to go through with just the $2 million line, which we will tie into North Peak's pump house. North Peak, which is north of basically, you know, they have a pump station that we would tie into. And so we're working in conjunction with them to understand their timeline. They believe that they're going to be breaking ground next year by the fall. The city sewer infrastructure, this is a long answer, but this is, you guys need to kind of have reference to this. The city should have this sewer completed by summer. North Peak has went hard on their deposits. So we feel pretty good about the viability of this, but I want to make sure that we're protecting our interests and our stakeholders' interests by tying those things to the coordination of that pump house being, you know, fulfilled. I don't want to go hard on our deposit and, you know, North Peak, you know, bows out or something. We want to make sure that, you know, we're protecting all interests, you know, the state and whatever. So right now what I need to do is we're meeting with Hayden and North Peak. I think, I don't know, Ryan's not been let in, but he's a project manager working on this, just to solidify those dates so we can get those kind of tied in our PSA. But I think the differences between our deal last year was we had a seller that wasn't, I'm gonna say this, you know, we had a fully executed LOI and a PSA that we spent probably $5,000 on and sent over to them, and they sat on it for a month, and that's not what's going on in this instance. And a market rate developer came in and swooped in, and they decided to negotiate with the market rate developer, which was really unfortunate because, you know, we put a lot of time and money into that.
Right, right.
Yeah, and in this instance, I feel like we have a seller that, you know, this is part of 39 acres, by the way.
Right, I knew that.
Yeah. So, you know, I think there's a lot more going for us with this particular seller. I've been working with him and have a good relationship. And so what I would say is within the next couple of weeks, we should have that completely nailed.
And then, right. And then this also has to be annexed into the city. So this, all of this property in the elbow is in the urban area reserve.
Sure. Yeah. So the North Peak site to the north is also part of a site that the seller owns, and it's going in for annexation in 2 weeks. And they're putting this particular, my parcel, into that annexation as well. So the seller is going to annex. So in our PSA, we're actually asking for the deliverable within 6 months by June to have it fully annexed, and they've agreed to that.
Is the seller going to annex the entire, it's like 39.5 acres that this is on?
You know, I don't want to speak on their behalf about that, but I do know with my 9 acres, yes. But I would think the way it should go is, you know, if I were them, I would put the whole 39 in because it's probably makes
It's all right there, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's enough of my questions. Thank you. Ian, I see your hand raised, and then Kathy, and then Mandy. So Ian, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. A question I have about the site selection and really overarchingly the process is that this site is fairly out of town and it's not in close quarters to a lot of services or other things that people might or work or any number of things that folks are going to need to have access to. What's the distance to the nearest local transit, and can you talk a little bit about how we're going to be supporting the folks living in this community just because geographically they're in many ways isolated at this site?
Yeah, I mean, you know, your concerns are very valid concerns. I think there's a couple things, you know, that we have to be thinking forward. This area, even though it seems like there is nothing out there, you know, Palish Homes is out there, Hayden Homes is out there, North Peak is out there, and there's a slew of other developers looking at all of this site. I think if you were to say 3 years ago, did anybody think that this was going to go as quickly? Probably not. We need to have this kind of forward thinking to get affordable housing in these areas, or you're going to have another concentration. The other thing is there aren't a lot of land opportunities for affordable housing because the market is so hot. It's very hard to make deals pencil. I was able to negotiate, I think, a very strong deal to where we can scale, where we can be competitive at the state level. Your concerns are valid though. You know, I think the thing that's going for is we've got a great school system out there. Walkability to schools where kids can engage in after school programs and things of that nature. On site, we plan on having a lot of different services. Things that we've done in the past are after school programs, employment access centers, community centers, and things of that nature. You know, public transportation, it's a good question. I mean, I kind of put that back to the city of Bend of what their public transportation initiatives will be out here because it is a quick growth and there is going to be a lot of families that need that access. And then, you know, what's nice about what you've done with the zoning here is it's got a lot of mixed use zoning. So I think what you're going to see is a lot of other things come in as housing comes in. Housing typically comes in first. And so I think you're going to see that. You know, I can't make promises, but you've set it up for success with the zoning that you've created out there. Did I answer?
Thank you.
Your question? Yep.
All right, Kathy, you are next, and then Mandy.
Okay.
Yeah. Hi, Steph. You may remember I was really encouraging your last project, and I just want to speak real quickly to one of the things that Ian had brought up. I had sat in on all of the elbow master planning efforts, and there will be a lot of mixed uses in that area as it develops. But you're absolutely right. You need your housing first before you need people to go to the services. And with our transportation bond having passed and a group working hard on those issues, I hope we'll see some good transportation options out there. One of the things that I brought up when you were talking about Mary Rose and the senior component, I was talking about, gee, you have a lot of parking on your project, and suggesting that there might be a way of reducing some of the parking. And I wanted to bring up, and Keith could jump in on this, but we just went to one of his projects. It was a senior project, and they have a charging station and a car dedicated as kind of a ride share car where people can reserve and use the car. And I really see that as being the future in a lot of cases. And so I'm wondering if you have plans to say, put in charging stations and look at rideshare options to potentially reduce the amount of impermeable surfaces that you would be putting out there of parking, or that you could phase your parking so that it doesn't have to happen all at once, and as the need might increase that you could do it. I mean, I'm just thinking, I just see that sea of parking in your plan, and I know it's a preliminary plan, but could you address some of those concerns?
Yeah, I mean, you're always trying to balance it with your developer hat of like, what is going to, it is further out. This isn't in the urban core. You have to balance it with city requirements and make sure, especially because we really plan on serving families and larger families out in this area. And I know as a mom of 3 that, having auto dependency is a real thing for trekking kids around and getting groceries and things of that nature. So, but we also try to bring in sustainable features. Many of our sites actually do have car charging, and we are trying to work with car share things. We also do bike charging for electric bikes. So we're always trying to think of things that reduce parking. Look, we don't like building it. It costs money. It doesn't add revenue. It's just an amenity. But you also want to make sure that you get it just right, that you're not creating a nuisance in the neighborhood or not really accommodating families. So it's something that we look at, and we'll look at even further with traffic studies and things like that. But I don't disagree.
Yeah, one of the things that we're looking at is decoupling apartments from parking so that it could be an option, so that people who don't need a car have less cost per unit because they're not paying for parking. And I just want to throw that out there as a concept moving forward, that there may be a percentage of people living there that would be happy with the other options. So
yeah.
I'll be quiet about parking. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. So we've got a few more minutes left for questions, and I want to make sure we get to Mandy and then to Keith. So great questions asked so far. Mandy, you have the floor.
Yeah, I noticed in your community support letters, it was primarily for-profit business owners, and I'm wondering how much you have coordinated or spoken to some of the service organizations locally, or people who support the individuals you actually are trying to build for, to get their input and see how this would impact them.
Yeah, I think Lynn might know how many and how many people I've talked to in the city of Bend over the last year and a half. I feel like we've done a really good job with that. I just didn't go after everybody to get letters of support. It's just, we certainly can. And I'm trying to think off the top of my head of who over the course of the last year I've spoken with. We've spoken, I'd have to get a list, and I could do a follow-up of all the people that we've spoken to, but we've talked to folks about permanent supportive housing and even been kind of like helpful of like, here's how I'm getting deals done, because for us, it's about community building and sharing knowledge and trying to help out. I'm not really pursuing a permanent supportive housing in Bend, but I definitely was really happy to hear about the Cleveland Commons project and what you're trying to accomplish. And we really support that. So yes, we're aware of, there's a lot more community engagement, but I have done quite a bit of work speaking with different individuals in the city of Bend. And it's all been really great feedback. We know we don't know everything. A lot of these folks are going to be stakeholders and partners. And we're trying to really, be a bridge builder, see what the families are going to be needing. So we do focus groups and community informed design and things like that. So we're early on in the stage. We've got about 4 months until application. So there's more work to be done for sure.
Yeah, that would be great to hear more from the local people for community feedback, because a lot of the letters seem to reflect the partners that you're already working with. Keith, you have the floor.
Thank you, Cindy. How you doing, Steph? The one thing I have a few questions, but the main question on this when I read through your application was related to timing. You guys are proposing a very ambitious project, which is awesome. The question I had is related, I guess there's two questions really. One was, are you reliant on other people to build out their infrastructure to get to you so that you can actually, get your, you'd mentioned pump stations and that sort of thing.
Yeah, so Well, I don't have my slides back up, but as I've mentioned, North Peak is the site that basically abuts up to Ferguson, and we're just below them. And so the game plan, Ferguson is going to get a sewer line put in by the city, and North Peak will be tying into that, and we will be tying into North Peak. North Peak is a year ahead of us. So, I mean, as you know, affordable housing is a little bit of a slower animal. So I did a lot of work around like, okay, timing wise, how does this all work out? They should have the city sewer line in by summer, and North Peak should be, have broken ground. I think they're thinking October, and by December of next year, they should have the pump station in. So really, we will know really quickly after, we're having conversations. He's already went hard on his deposit. Yes. Okay. Thank you. So if you see over here where it says RM and RH, that's abutting up to Ferguson, because I can't show you my cursor, but so along Ferguson is where this sewer line goes in. The half yellow and half brown site is North Peak. I'm over here, kitty corner, the RM site, that's the 9 acres that I'll be developing. And so probably right at the nexus right there where we meet is a pump station that will go up to Ferguson, and we'll, potentially share in some offsite improvements to be able to do that. And so, yes, it is dependent, but I feel like the conversations we've had have been really good, and he's, putting in his land use review application. He's went hard on deposits. Most developers don't leave, hundreds of $1,000s of deposits hard without a clear shot. And notwithstanding the fact that we're closing a full year after he's got that pump station, I feel like it gives us enough latitude to kind of, hedge the bet. And also we're working with Hayden Homes, and that's kind of also what we're trying to figure out is how they play into this conversation, and is there some synergy with working together? I mean, look, this isn't the easiest deal. Large deals aren't in Bend.
Sure.
Very hard to come by 9 acres. And I guess what I'm willing to say is we'll work really hard to do a good job on this. And we're willing to put in the extra effort because we think that it's important to be able to scale housing in the city of Bend.
No, I appreciate that. And that one of your last comments goes into my second question was the timing of being able to apply for financing. You'd mentioned that you're looking at the March application. If annexation is still in flux, do you feel you'll even be able to apply by meeting the state standards for that related to I mean, the check boxes you have to mark where you have access to utilities and you have entitlements, or if there are ever big land use things going on. So what are your thoughts there?
Easy to answer. Yeah, I mean, because the application's going in 2 weeks, we will ask the city of Bend to give us a letter that basically states that it is for review. And by the time we're awarded, which will be end of June, end of July, somewhere in there, we should have that in hand. And usually when you're awarded, they just want to make sure by the time you're awarded that you have it in hand. So I think we'll be totally fine, because I'm not asking for like a zoning change or anything. It's RM. We could look at SB8 on this to densify. I'm not sure if we need to with the 9 acres. I think we can kind of nice and neatly get everything we want. So I think it does meet the readiness threshold.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. So are there any other questions? I feel like you guys have done a good job shaking me down. It's good. You should do this. I will say I'm tenacious. I don't give up. I'm very determined to develop and Bend really nice quality affordable housing. I do want to work with your city, and I don't give up. And it hasn't been easy. It hasn't been easy, but I am determined to do a deal in the city of Bend. It's going to happen. So
thank you. Yes, thank you so much. Yes, your spreadsheets and charts are all very lovely. don't have that gift.
Okay, well,
Thank you for all the information. Yes.
thank you. I don't know, do you kick me out now or how do I wouldn't mind staying on just to hear what else is going on in the city of Bend, but what do you tell me what you want me to do?
So I think what we have, I did get an update. We have not connected with the Florida Avenue applicants. So I think that is not going to happen. And without further ado, I see Councillor Campbell's hand raised. So I'm going to give her the floor. And then next on our agenda is staff updates and things like that. I'm sure you can stay and listen. So thank you again. And Barb Campbell, you have the floor.
Thank you, Cindy. I wanted to say to Steph, she's talking about being so excited about the city of Bend. And I wanted to, for my own little part, say, we're excited about you too. And I don't mean to try and influence the committee. All of the proposals are so exciting. I just feel like I've been sitting here going, oh, yay, so just thank you to the committee for, these decisions are so hard because they are all so exciting. And so thank you so much for your work on this. And yes, for shaking down the presenter and asking questions that honestly, I never could have come up with. That's the whole point of having you as our advisory committee. So thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, Barb. Appreciate it. Appreciate your support. Almost every meeting, you're always here. Staff report, is that next? That's what I have. Am I missing anything, Lynn or Rachel?
I think that's it. I'm going to hand it to Rachel for the first couple of items.
So this is just a reminder that your scores for all the proposals, even those that we have not heard from yet, we will hear the public service proposals at our next AHAC meeting. But all your scores need to be submitted in Neighborly no later than Tuesday, January 4th. So that means if you want a holiday season, not having to think about these things, you might want to review those score or those proposals and submit those scores. We are going to ask for that early deadline so that possibly we can hear our public service presenters at our first AHAC meeting in January and not need to meet again at the end of January. I believe that's, let me just double check the date, January 26th. I want to make sure that is all on your calendars as a potential that's January 26th, a potential AHAC meeting for deliberations in case we cannot get through the deliberations on the regularly scheduled meeting on the 12th.
Anything else, Rachel or Lynn?
Rachel, do you want to talk about transportation bond also?
Yes, so the Transportation Bond Oversight Committee made recommendations to City Council's work session on what or the priority of the transportation bond funds for projects. If you all have any interest in writing to council as AHAC or addressing those recommendations, please reach out to Lynn or I. It sounds like they were, very in line recommendations with this committee. But if you have any concerns, please reach out to Lynn and I and let us know. And then we can see if AHAC wants to weigh in before council hears those recommendations at a meeting, not just the work session. Thanks so much.
Cindy, Allison has her hand raised.
Yes, I was just going to say that. Thank you. Allison, you have the floor.
Thank you. On the as to scoring, I want to just clarify on all of the proposals that we just heard, there's not repayment anticipated, correct? Or do these have repayment and I'm just not seeing that part?
Okay, so repayment is part of all of these proposals. These would all be a loan.
Okay.
They are all under the city's loan terms. And I can email all that out to you so that you have it in front of you. The proposal doesn't ask them for specific loan terms. It says if you will be doing something different than the city's terms, then
Gotcha.
let us
Thank
know.
you. And that's what Matt was referring to earlier. And
Correct.
I just want to double check before I do the scoring. Thank you.
I will send that those terms out for all of you so that you have them in front of you.
In addition, you all heard a little bit about the Stevens Road or DSL parcel discussion from Ryan Rankin last month. You'll get an email from us momentarily about that and sort of next steps. There is an online open house going on. You can interact that way. And staff are continuing to do work on that project in the background, and we'll continue to bring you information as time goes on. Oh, I see Kathy's hand up,
Yes.
Chair, if that's okay.
Yes, I just saw it pop up. Kathy, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I noticed that the other part of Stevens tract was up before the Planning Commission, and I'm curious as what kind of connectivity there'll be between the two parcels, and the fact that there was a lack of connectivity at all in that proposal to the Planning Commission. I understood it was because of phases that they're using, but nevertheless, it just seems like there should be better road connectivity to future development. And I'm just wondering, as things move forward with our part, how that can be accomplished.
Yeah, and I don't have the perfect answer for that today. I think we are still so preliminary. We're not even looking at colors on the map yet, if that makes sense. So definitely the goal is connectivity. Terms here, Stevens Ranch is the parcel that DSL already sold that is within the UGB that is in master planning right now. So right. Stevens Ranch. The parcel that we are working with, the second half roughly, is Stevens Road. So if you hear,
but they're contiguous. They're contiguous.
So what's going on? I just wanted to clarify.
Right, right.
Stevens Ranch has some issues with canal. Also, the canal is in there somehow, which may be part of why they're unable to connect. And I'm not 100% on this. I'm speculating, but I believe that that's part of their connection issue. But certainly with the second half, Stevens Road, we do intend. I mean, it has to connect, and so we will find ways. And as we look at areas that are outside of the UGB, we don't just look at what's already next to them. We're also looking at what future development will be. And so our block length standards, for instance, anticipate that someday that northern parcel may also become part of the UGB that's outside right now. And so we need to make sure that there are connections to the parcels that aren't yet in the UGB and getting developed as well. And so that's definitely part of what engineering and planning are thinking about as they're looking at this. So I'm happy to report back on that when we have more information, but it's a little too early to really get into specifics like that. Please keep that in mind as we continue to talk about it, because that's exactly the type of questions that we staff want you all to ask to make sure that we're looking at this appropriately. So there is a work session on Monday about at Planning Commission about the TSP in Juniper Ridge. And this really has to do with CC&Rs on Juniper Ridge and sort of industrial large lot development. Wanted to let you know that that's happening. You all didn't seem all that interested in providing sort of a group response in any way because it mostly is industrial, but wanted to let you know that's out there and you can stream that if you're interested. If somebody's dying to participate, just shoot me an email after. We'll get you on as a panelist for that. January 19th is our regular committee council check-in. So you all recall that these are quarterly check-ins between you and council to check in on goals, council goals, and how we're doing on fulfilling those goals. On occasion, we have the opportunity to ask for things that you want to work on from council as well. I'm not sure yet what the framework of this upcoming check-in will be, but know that it's out there. Please pencil it in. I think we've been trying really hard to not start before 4 on those committee council check-in days. So I'd say anticipate a 4 o'clock start. There have been meetings where we've started like 2 or 3 and it gets pretty painful. All I can say is thank goodness we're not in the actual council chamber chairs because the audience chairs there are awful. So it's a little more bearable watching from home in those marathon meetings. So anyway, January 19th, committee council check-in, just pencil it in for now. And then with that, I'm going to hand it to Amy for a quick update on the Navigation Center.
So good evening, almost. It's getting dark out there. Just wanted to update folks that on November 19th, the city released a request for proposals to pre-qualified community-based organizations to develop and operate a navigation center. The navigation center is defined as a low barrier emergency shelter that's open 7 days per week and connects individuals and families with health services, permanent housing, and public benefit. You may recall that we received $2.5 million in the last legislative session in order to begin funding for the Navigation Center. And we're expecting that the deadline will be the 22nd of December and that we're hoping to have an award on the 6th of January. People may be surprised to hear that the Navigation Center isn't a walk-up service. We're beginning the RFP with the definition because we want it to be, to start just with the basic low barrier shelter with services. And so that doesn't mean that we can't expand to a greater definition of a navigation center and provide those walk-up services later. But at this time, it's strictly a low barrier shelter for the folks that are living there. And I'm open for questions if anybody has any.
Does anyone have any questions on that? Put my glasses on. I can't see the hands without them.
Also on Friday, the temporary outdoor shelter RFP will also be closing, and hopefully we'll have some reports for folks next month on that as well.
Great. Thank you, Amy. Appreciate that update. Lots of things happening every day. I don't know how anyone can be bored. Just don't. Anything else from staff, Rachel or Lynn?
I wanted to say, I hope you all have a wonderful holiday season. It looks like we do have one more hand, so I'm jumping the gun a little bit, but just how much we appreciate you all for all you are doing to support the city and our community, and the amazing amount of time that you put towards this committee and the work that we're doing. And so just really wanted to send out that appreciation. It's been a phenomenal year, full of crazy, but also good. And we're continuing to do good work even through all of the crazy of the past couple of years. So tons of appreciation to all of you. Great questions today. And thank you all so much. I hope you have a chance to relax over the next few weeks.
Absolutely. You're very welcome. And we'll get our scores in time for Rachel so she's not panicking on the 3rd of January. And Heather, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to clarify, when is the outdoor shelter RFP going out, or has it been opened? I was taking notes.
It is already open.
Okay.
Yeah. And so it closes on Friday. It was tomorrow, but it had been extended a day due to addendum requirements.
Okay, thank you.
So the 10th.
Great.
And then I will just say you all need to look for either tonight or tomorrow. The neighborly updates will now give you access to the public service proposals. I just didn't want to overwhelm you and give you all access to those. In addition to the 6 proposals we heard from today, although we're missing one presentation, but I would still go ahead and score the proposal that we did not hear from today. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you so much. All right. I think I will close the meeting without any additional discussion. Everyone, happy holidays. Be safe out there. Enjoy the snow if it snows. Enjoy the no snow if you don't like snow. It's all good. All right. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Happy holidays if you do holidays.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Barb. Thank you.
Yeah.
Gina, hi. I can't hear you. You're muted.
Okay, hit stop recording at the bottom, and it will ask you to save it to your iCloud.
Recording pause. So I want to stop recording. Are you sure you want to stop recording to the cloud? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then disconnect from live stream.
And so just hit live, assign someone, use a third.
Like it should